What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved young stars sits across the table from one of daytime television's most outspoken hosts? And the conversation takes a turn no one in the studio expects. Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The audience is already energized as the camera pans across the table. The hosts are smiling, the crowd is clapping, and Tom Holland walks out to warm applause. He waves, does a quick little half bow, and sits down, clearly relaxed. Whoopi Goldberg smiles at him. "It's good to have you here, Tom." Tom grins. "It's really good to be here. I've heard a lot about this table." The audience laughs lightly. Joy leans in. "All good things, we hope." Tom chuckles. "Well, mostly good." That gets another ripple of laughter. The mood is friendly, easy. They start by talking about his latest project, a new film he's promoting. He speaks calmly, confidently. He talks about growth, about wanting to step into more mature roles, about feeling grateful for the support he's had since his Spider-Man days. Sonny nods. "You've grown up in front of the world." "That's not easy." Tom shrugs slightly. "It's been a strange experience. I started when I was 19. I'm 29 now. That's a big stretch of your life to have people watching." Whoopi tilts her head. "But that comes with the territory, right? You sign up for fame." Tom smiles politely. "Of course. I understand that. But understanding it doesn't always make it easier." The audience murmurs softly. Alyssa jumps in. "What's been the hardest part?" Tom pauses for a second, choosing his words carefully. "Probably the assumptions. People think they know you. They think they know your politics, your opinions, your values. And sometimes they're very loud about what they think you should believe." Whoopi raises an eyebrow slightly. "Well, people are loud these days about everything." A few laughs from the audience. Tom nods. "True. But I do think there's a difference between discussion and pressure." The tone subtly shifts. Whoopi folds her hands on the table. "Pressure from who?" Tom looks directly at her, still calm. "From media. From social media. Sometimes from shows like this." There's a noticeable reaction from the audience, a mix of oh and nervous laughter. Joy leans back slightly. "Wait a minute." Whoopi's smile doesn't disappear, but it tightens just a bit. "Shows like this." Tom nods gently. "I don't mean this show specifically. I just mean in general. There's often this expectation that if you have a platform, you must speak on every issue. And if you don't, that silence gets interpreted as something negative." Sunny crosses her arms loosely. "Do you feel like you've been unfairly judged for staying quiet?" Tom exhales slowly. "Sometimes, yeah." The room gets quieter. Whoopi leans forward slightly. "But don't you think that when you have millions of followers, especially young followers, there's a responsibility?" Tom nods immediately. "Absolutely. And I take that seriously. But I also think responsibility doesn't always mean broadcasting every opinion you have." A few audience members clap lightly. Whoopi glances at the crowd, then back at Tom. But staying silent can also send a message. Tom's expression changes just a bit. He's still polite, but he's more focused now. It can, but so can speaking without full understanding. And I don't ever want to contribute noise just to prove I'm engaged. Joy jumps in. "That's fair." Sunny adds, "But some would say that neutrality favors the status quo." There's a slight murmur in the audience. Tom doesn't immediately answer. He looks down for a second, then back up. "I don't see it as neutrality. I see it as being thoughtful. If I'm going to speak about something, I want to understand it deeply. I don't want to post a square on Instagram and think I've done my job." The audience reacts with a mix of applause and surprised laughter. Whoopi's eyes narrow slightly, not angrily, but intently. "Are you suggesting that others are just posting squares?" Tom shakes his head quickly. No. I'm not criticizing anyone specific. I'm just saying performative activism exists. And I don't want to participate in that." The energy at the table shifts more noticeably now. Sunny leans in. "But you've benefited from a very passionate fan base that is vocal about social justice issues." Tom nods. "I'm grateful for that. So shouldn't you match that energy?" Sunny presses. Tom pauses again. "I think I match it in my own way. Through donations. Through private work. Through conversations that aren't always public." Whoopi interjects. "But private work doesn't inspire the masses." Tom looks directly at her. "Sometimes it does. It just doesn't trend." There's a louder reaction from the audience now, some clapping, some murmuring. Joy glances at Whoopi. "He's not wrong." Whoopi turns slightly toward Joy. "I didn't say he was wrong. I'm just saying that silence from public figures can be frustrating for people who feel unheard. Tom nods respectfully. I understand that frustration. I really do. But I also think there's danger in demanding statements from people before they're ready or informed. Alyssa adds quietly, that's a valid concern. Sunny looks at Tom carefully. Have you ever felt attacked for not speaking out? Tom's jaw tightens just slightly. Yes. The audience quiets completely. He continues. There have been times where I've seen headlines implying I don't care about something simply because I didn't post about it within 24 hours. Whoopi responds calmly but firmly. The world moves fast. Tom replies just as calmly. And that's part of the problem. There's another audible reaction from the crowd. Whoopi's posture straightens. So what's the solution? Tom leans back slightly, but his tone remains steady. Maybe more patience. Maybe understanding that not every meaningful action happens online. Sunny looks unconvinced. But online is where people gather now. Tom nods. Yes, but it's also where outrage thrives. The audience claps again, louder this time. Whoopi raises her hand slightly, signaling for calm. Let's be clear. Outrage also drives change. Tom doesn't hesitate. Sometimes. But sometimes it just drives clicks. There it is. The tension is no longer subtle. The audience reacts with a mix of applause and sharp inhales. Whoopi looks at him steadily. Are you saying media uses outrage for profit? Tom hesitates for just half a second. I think everyone in media benefits from engagement. Joy lets out a low whistle. Oh boy. The crowd laughs nervously. Whoopi leans forward again, her voice controlled. Including you, Tom. Tom nods immediately. Yes, including me. That unexpected admission softens the room slightly. I'm not pretending I'm above it, Tom continues. I just don't want to add to something that feels unhealthy. Sunny looks at Whoopi, then back at Tom. But who decides what's unhealthy? Tom's answer comes quietly. That's exactly the issue. We're all deciding in real time, and sometimes we're deciding loudly. The audience sits in an uneasy silence for a moment. Whoopi finally says, You're challenging the system while sitting inside it. Tom gives a small, respectful smile. Maybe, but I think conversations like this are important. The crowd claps, louder now. Whoopi nods slowly. They are. But understand this. When you don't speak, people fill in the blanks. Tom meets her gaze. And sometimes they fill them in incorrectly. The camera cuts briefly to the audience, some nodding, some whispering. Joy tries to lighten the moment. Well, this is more intense than our usual Tuesday. Laughter breaks the tension slightly. But the energy at the table has clearly shifted. This is no longer just a promotional interview. It's a debate. And it's only just beginning. There's a brief pause as the audience settles again. But the air at the table feels different now. The smiles are smaller. The posture is straighter. Everyone knows the conversation just crossed into deeper territory. Whoopi adjusts her glasses and looks directly at Tom. Let me ask you something plainly. When major events happen, social issues, political moments, crises, do you think celebrities have a duty to speak immediately? Tom exhales softly through his nose, not annoyed but measured. I think celebrities have a duty to care. I'm not sure they have a duty to perform that care publicly on a deadline. A low murmur runs through the audience. Sunny jumps in quickly. But when your audience is looking to you for reassurance or solidarity, isn't silence confusing? Tom turns to her. It can be. But rushed statements can also be misleading. I've seen celebrities post things that they later have to retract because they didn't fully understand what they were speaking on. Joy nods slightly. That does happen. Whoopi leans back in her chair, arms crossing loosely. But isn't that part of growth? Speaking, learning, correcting. Tom tilts his head. Sure, but the correction rarely travels as far as the original statement. The audience reacts again. A few claps, a few mms. Sunny looks thoughtful but firm. You're a global star. When you say nothing, it's noticeable. Tom gives a small shrug. I'm aware of that. But I also don't want to become someone who comments on everything just so my silence isn't misinterpreted. Whoopi presses gently but directly. Is it about fear? Fear of backlash. There's a sharp stillness in the room. Tom doesn't rush to answer. I'd be lying if I said backlash doesn't exist. But it's not fear that drives my decisions. It's responsibility. I don't want to mislead people. Sunny leans in. But do you worry that staying quiet might unintentionally support systems that harm people? Tom's expression tightens slightly, not defensive but serious. I worry about that. Of course I do. But I also worry about oversimplifying complex issues into social media captions. The audience claps lightly again. Whoopi watches him closely. You're very careful with your words. Tom smiles faintly. I have to be. Joy jumps in with a half laugh. You're sitting at this table. Yes, you do. The audience laughs, tension easing for a second. But Whoopi isn't quite done. Let me push back. When younger fans see someone they admire stay silent, they sometimes interpret that as indifference. Tom nods slowly. And that's unfortunate. But I'd rather show my values through consistent behavior than trending posts. Sunny's voice sharpens just a bit. But people don't always see your private behavior. Tom responds calmly. That's true. But does that mean it doesn't count? A few audience members clap louder at that. Whoopi glances at the crowd again. You're getting support out there. Tom chuckles softly. I wasn't trying to campaign. Joy laughs. Too late. Sunny turns slightly toward Whoopi. I think what he's saying is that authenticity matters more than visibility. Whoopi nods once. Authenticity matters. But visibility drives awareness. Tom looks at her respectfully. I agree. But awareness without depth can turn into performance. There's that word again. Whoopi catches it. You keep saying performance. You think a lot of this is performative. Tom hesitates, clearly aware of how this could sound. I think some of it can be. Not all. But sometimes outrage cycles move so fast that it feels like people are competing to be the most publicly upset. The audience reacts with a mixture of applause and uneasy shifting. Sunny responds quickly. Or maybe they're genuinely upset. Tom nods immediately. Absolutely. I'm not questioning genuine emotion. I'm questioning the pressure to package that emotion for public consumption. That line lands hard. The audience goes quiet before breaking into louder applause. Whoopi leans forward again, elbows lightly on the table. So you're saying the system encourages emotional branding? Tom lets out a small breath. In some cases, yes. Joy lets out a soft, wow. Sunny looks directly at Tom. But you benefit from branding too. Your movies, your interviews, that's all part of it. Tom doesn't flinch. Yes. And that's why I'm cautious. Because I know how powerful that machine is. Whoopi studies him for a moment. You're challenging the same machine that helped build you. Tom smiles politely. Maybe I'm just trying to understand it better now that I'm older. The audience gives a small round of applause. Sunny tilts her head. Has anyone in your team ever told you to speak out on something because it would look good? There's an audible intake of breath from the audience. Tom pauses. He could dodge it. He doesn't. Yes, he says plainly. The crowd reacts instantly. Louder murmurs, scattered claps. Whoopi's eyebrows rise. And Tom continues calmly. And sometimes I've agreed. And sometimes I've said no. Joy leans forward. That's honest. Sunny presses. And when you said no? Tom's jaw tightens just slightly. There were discussions. The audience laughs nervously. Whoopi's voice softens a bit. That's real. Tom nods. It is. There's pressure from fans, from studios, from publicists. Everyone wants clarity. But real life isn't always clear. Sunny responds, but certain issues feel clear to the people affected. Tom doesn't interrupt her. He waits. That's true, he says. And I would never minimize someone's lived experience. I just don't think my immediate Instagram story is the solution. A few people clap loudly at that. Others remain quiet. Whoopi notices the divide. See, this is interesting. You've got half the room clapping and half thinking. Joy laughs. That's our show. Tom smiles. And that's healthy, right? Disagreement. Whoopi nods slowly. Disagreement is healthy. Disengagement is not. Tom responds gently, but I'm not disengaged. I'm just not always vocal. Sunny leans back slightly, studying him. Do you think sometimes silence protects your brand? That question hits differently. The audience goes very still. Tom takes a breath before answering. Maybe. But sometimes speaking protects your brand too. There's a ripple through the room. Whoopi raises her eyebrows. Explain. Tom keeps his tone steady. There are moments when public statements are expected. And not making one might cost you support. So speaking can be strategic. Joy whistles softly again. He's not sugarcoating. Sunny nods slowly. So you admit there's strategy involved. Tom nods. Of course there is. In Hollywood? Always. The audience reacts, some laughter, some applause. Whoopi's expression is thoughtful now, less confrontational, more analytical. So what would make you speak immediately? Tom answers without hesitation this time. If I'm informed, if I'm directly connected, if I know I can add something meaningful rather than just volume. Sunny responds, and if you're not informed? I listen first, Tom says. There's a quiet beat. Then scattered applause grows into something stronger. Whoopi looks at the crowd, then back at Tom. Listening first. That's not something we hear often. Tom shrugs lightly. Maybe we should hear it more. The tension has shifted again, not gone, but evolving. Joy smiles. This turned into a masterclass. Sunny chuckles softly. It's definitely not the usual press tour chat. Whoopi gives a small nod. No, it's not. She looks directly at Tom again, but this time her tone is less sharp and more reflective. You understand why people push, though. Tom nods immediately. I do. I really do. People are hurting. They want voices with reach to amplify their pain. Sunny adds quietly. Exactly. Tom continues. I just think amplification without understanding can sometimes distort the message. The audience hums in agreement and disagreement at the same time. Whoopi leans back slowly. So you're advocating for patience in a world that rewards speed. Tom smiles faintly. That's one way to put it. Joy laughs. Good luck with that. The audience laughs too. But underneath the humor, the tension hasn't fully dissolved. It's changed shape. Whoopi glances down at her notes, then back up. We're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, I want to talk about something specific. A moment last year when people expected you to speak and you didn't. The audience reacts loudly, curious, intrigued. Tom nods once, composed. Okay. The camera begins to pull back slightly as the applause sign lights up. The crowd claps, but the energy is charged now. Because whatever specific moment Whoopi is about to bring up, it's going to test everything Tom just said. The show comes back from commercial, and the applause is loud, louder than before. The energy in the room has shifted from casual daytime chatter to something sharper, more focused. Everyone at the table knows this isn't just promo anymore. Whoopi looks directly into the camera first, then turns to Tom. All right, we're back with Tom Holland. Before the break, we were talking about public responsibility and speaking out. And I want to bring up something specific. The audience quiets almost instantly. Last year, Whoopi continues, there was a major international humanitarian crisis that dominated headlines for weeks. A lot of actors, some your age, some younger, made public statements within hours. You didn't. And your name was trending because of it. There's a low murmur in the crowd. Tom nods slowly. He doesn't look surprised. Yes, I remember. Sunny leans in. People were asking why you were quiet. Tom takes a breath. I was quiet publicly. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. That's what people saw. Tom nods. Right. And I understand why that bothered some people. Joy jumps in. But you didn't say anything for almost 2 weeks. Tom looks at her calmly. Correct. Sunny doesn't hesitate. That felt like a long time to people who were watching very painful events unfold in real time. Tom's jaw tightens just slightly, but his voice remains steady. It was a long time. Whoopi folds her hands on the table. So what was happening in those 2 weeks? The studio is silent now. Tom answers carefully. I was reading. I was talking to people directly affected. I was donating. I was trying to understand the history behind what was happening before I attached my name to it. A few audience members clap lightly, but it's mixed. Sunny tilts her head. But by the time you spoke, the moment had shifted. Tom nods. Exactly. Exactly. Sunny repeats, a little sharper. Tom continues. Which proves my point. The news cycle moved on. The outrage shifted. But the issue didn't disappear. So I chose to speak once I felt grounded, even if it wasn't trending anymore. Whoopi watches him closely. But do you see how that can look like waiting for the heat to die down? There it is. The audience reacts with a louder murmur. Tom pauses before responding. I understand that perception. Joy leans in. Was that part of it? Tom shakes his head firmly. No. If I was trying to avoid heat, I wouldn't be having this conversation right now. A few people clap at that. Sunny presses. But you have to admit, there's safety in waiting. Tom doesn't dodge it. There can be. The audience reacts again, that honesty landing heavy. Tom continues, but there's also risk. Because waiting makes people question your values. Whoopi nods slowly. So which mattered more to you? Accuracy or optics? Tom doesn't hesitate this time. Accuracy. Sunny crosses her arms loosely. Even if it cost you goodwill? Tom looks at her directly. Yes. There's a split reaction in the audience. some clapping, some clearly unsure. Whoopi's tone softens slightly, but her eyes remain sharp. Let me ask you something harder. Tom gives a small smile. Okay, do you think sometimes celebrities hide behind, "I need more information," because they're afraid to alienate parts of their audience? The room goes still. Joy lets out a quiet Tom inhales slowly. Some might. I can't speak for everyone. Whoopi leans in. But you can speak for yourself. Tom nods. For me, it's not about protecting my audience. It's about not oversimplifying suffering. Sunny responds immediately. But isn't silence also a simplification? That question lands hard. Tom's expression shifts, more serious now. Silence can be misinterpreted. I agree. But noise can also distort. Whoopi watches him carefully. You're very critical of noise. Tom gives a small shrug. I grew up in it. The audience reacts softly. He continues, I've seen how quickly narratives form. One post, one headline, one out-of-context quote, and suddenly that's who you are. Joy nods slowly. That part is true. Sunny says, but that's true for activists too, not just actors. Tom immediately agrees. Yes, and that's why I don't want to add confusion to already complicated situations. Whoopi sits back thinking. Then she shifts slightly in her chair. Let me push this in a different direction. Tom looks at her, attentive. You're a young white male actor in Hollywood, Whoopi says plainly. There are communities who don't have the luxury of stepping back and waiting. For them, it's survival. The audience reacts strongly. Applause, murmurs of agreement. Tom doesn't interrupt. He listens fully. When the room quiets, he speaks. I recognize that privilege. I do. Sunny nods. Then shouldn't that privilege be used loudly? Tom answers carefully. Privilege should be used responsibly. Whoopi responds quickly. Responsibly and loudly are not opposites. Tom pauses. That's fair, he says. The audience reacts to that concession. He continues, but I also think if I speak loudly without depth, I risk centering myself in someone else's struggle. That line draws a louder reaction, applause mixed with thoughtful silence. Sunny studies him. So you're worried about making it about you? Tom nods. Yes. Joy chimes in. That's more self-awareness than we usually hear. A few laughs ripple through the crowd. But Whoopi isn't smiling now. She's focused. There's a difference, she says slowly, between centering yourself and using your platform to amplify others. Tom nods. And I try to amplify when I can. Sunny responds. But amplification usually requires visibility. Tom answers, which is why I eventually spoke. Sunny tilts her head. Eventually. Tom's voice stays calm. Yes, eventually. The repetition hangs in the air. Whoopi glances toward the audience. You see the tension here. The crowd murmurs agreement. She turns back to Tom. People in pain don't want eventually. They want now. Tom's expression tightens slightly, not anger, but weight. I understand that, he says quietly. But speaking now, when you're not prepared, can create harm too. Sunny asks, did anyone directly affected reach out to you? Tom nods. Yes. And what did they say? He pauses. They said they appreciated that I took the time to ask questions instead of assuming. There's a soft wave of applause. Whoopi looks at him carefully. And others criticized you? Yes, Tom says plainly. Joy asks, did that bother you? Tom smiles faintly. Of course it did. I'm human. The audience laughs lightly, easing the tension just a bit. Sunny presses again. But did it make you reconsider your approach? Tom shakes his head. It made me reflect, but not change the core principle. And that principle is? Whoopi asks. Tom answers clearly, firmly. Thoughtfulness over immediacy. The audience reacts. Louder applause from some sections, quiet skepticism from others. Whoopi nods slowly. That's not a popular stance in 2026. Tom gives a small grin. I've noticed. Joy laughs. But Sunny leans forward again, one last push. Just be honest. If your next big movie was about to release during that crisis, would you have spoken sooner? The question hits like a spark. The audience goes completely silent. Tom doesn't look offended, just thoughtful. That's a tough question, he admits. Whoopi says softly, answer it. Tom looks down for a brief second, then back up. Probably. The audience reacts loudly, gasps, applause, murmurs. Sunny's eyebrows rise. Why? Tom doesn't hesitate. Because attention would have already been on me. And if attention is on me, I might as well redirect it. There's a mix of reactions, some approving, some skeptical. Whoopi studies him carefully. So timing does matter. Tom nods. Timing always matters. Joy says, well, that's refreshingly honest. Sunny leans back, folding her arms again. At least you're not pretending strategy doesn't exist. Tom smiles slightly. It exists. I just don't want it to be the only reason I speak. There's a pause. The tension is thick, but it's not explosive. It's layered. Complicated. Whoopi finally nods once. All right. She looks toward the audience, then back at Tom. I don't agree with everything you're saying. Tom nods respectfully. I didn't expect you to. A few laughs break through. But, Whoopi continues, I appreciate that you're not dodging. The audience applauds. Tom exhales slightly, the first visible sign of release. But the conversation isn't over. Because Whoopi leans in one more time. And when we come back, I want to talk about whether Hollywood itself creates this pressure, and whether you're willing to call it out by name. The audience reacts loudly again. Tom gives a small, knowing smile. Okay, he says. And you can feel it. The next part is going to get even more direct. The audience applause rolls as the show returns from its final break, but this time it feels different, heavier, anticipatory. The smiles at the table are more restrained. Everyone knows this isn't wrapping up with a light joke about Spider-Man. Whoopi looks straight ahead before turning to Tom. All right, let's finish this honestly. The audience quiets down almost instantly. Before the break, she continues, I asked whether Hollywood creates the very pressure you're describing. The pressure to speak quickly, strategically, visibly. So I'm going to ask it plainly. Does Hollywood reward performative activism? There's an audible reaction in the room. Tom doesn't rush his answer. Sometimes, yes. The crowd reacts, louder this time. Some applause, some sharp murmurs. Sunny leans forward. In what way? Tom keeps his tone calm. When statements trend, when brands align themselves publicly with causes, when premieres become political stages, that visibility can translate into goodwill. And goodwill can translate into ticket sales. Joy lets out a quiet, wow. Whoopi watches him carefully. You're talking about your own industry. Tom nods. Yes. Sunny presses. Have you seen it firsthand? Tom pauses, choosing his words carefully again. I've seen moments where people were praised more for posting than for actually doing anything. The audience reacts loudly, a mix of applause and discomfort. Whoopi leans back slightly. And you think that's common? Tom answers evenly. I think it happens. Sunny interjects. But there are also celebrities who do both speak and act. Absolutely, Tom says quickly. And they should be recognized. I'm not dismissing that at all. There's a brief pause. Whoopi folds her hands again. So what's the alternative? Silence until you feel fully educated. Tom shakes his head. No. The alternative is humility. Saying, I'm learning. Saying, here are voices you should listen to instead of me. The audience claps, louder this time. Sunny nods slowly. That's amplification. Tom smiles slightly. Exactly. Whoopi tilts her head. But you didn't say that at first. Tom admits, I didn't. And I learned from that. There's a shift at the table, less combative now, more reflective. Joy says, so this isn't you defending every past decision. Tom shakes his head. No, I've made mistakes. I've waited too long sometimes. I've also spoken too quickly before and regretted it. The honesty softens the room. Sunny looks at him carefully. That's the first time you've said that. Tom nods. Because it's true. The audience applauds, genuine this time. Whoopi studies him for a moment, then nods slowly. Growth matters. Tom responds quietly. That's all I'm trying to do. There's a brief silence, not tense but thoughtful. Then Whoopi shifts gears slightly. You know this conversation is going to be clipped, posted, dissected. The audience laughs knowingly. Tom grins. I assumed. Sunny smiles. There will be headlines. Tom shrugs lightly. There always are. Joy jumps in, half teasing. What do you think they'll say? Tom laughs softly. Probably that I clashed with Whoopi Goldberg. The audience erupts in laughter and applause. Whoopi smirks. Did we clash? Tom smiles respectfully. We disagreed. Whoopi nods. That's not a bad thing. The crowd applauds again. Sunny adds, healthy disagreement is kind of the point of this table. Tom nods. And I respect that. Whoopi leans in slightly, her voice more personal now. I push because I care. Not because I want to trap you. Tom meets her gaze. I know. There's a sincerity there that shifts the mood completely. Joy says softly, "This is why live TV matters." The audience claps. But Whoopi isn't quite finished. "One last question," she says. "If you could go back to that moment last year, would you do anything differently?" The room grows quiet again. Tom thinks for a long second. "Yes," he says. The audience leans in. "I would have said earlier that I was listening. Not a full statement. Not a slogan. Just acknowledgement." Sonny nods slowly. Whoopi nods too. "That matters," Tom continues, "because silence without context feels colder than it is." That line hits. The audience applauds, strong, unified. Whoopi smiles faintly. "That's a good answer." Tom exhales slightly, tension visibly easing. Joy claps lightly. "Look at that. We solved the internet." The audience laughs again, this time genuinely relaxed. Whoopi turns toward the camera. "Tom Holland, everybody." The crowd stands for a brief ovation. Not explosive, but respectful. Tom stands, shakes hands with the hosts. There's a brief moment where he and Whoopi exchange a few quiet words off mic. She pats his arm. He nods. And then the show moves on. But the conversation doesn't end there. Within minutes of the episode airing, clips start circulating online. The phrase "Tom Holland calls out performative activism" trends on X. Another headline reads, "Whoopi Goldberg challenges Tom Holland on silence." Some accounts frame it as a clash. Others call it a thoughtful debate. On Instagram, short clips rack up millions of views. One clip of Tom saying, "Thoughtfulness over immediacy," is shared widely. Another clip of Whoopi saying, "People in pain don't want eventually," sparks heated comment sections. Fans are divided. Some praise Tom for being honest about industry pressure. Others criticize him for acknowledging strategy in timing statements. Media outlets run opinion pieces, dissecting every line. The next morning, entertainment blogs debate whether this was a generational divide moment. Old-school activism versus digital-era pressure. Tom's team releases a short follow-up post, not defensive, not dramatic. It reads, "Appreciate the space for real conversation. Still learning. Always listening." That post gets just as much attention as the interview. Behind the scenes, sources say the exchange wasn't hostile during commercial breaks. In fact, Tom and Whoopi reportedly continued talking off camera. No shouting. No drama backstage. Just disagreement. And that's what made it powerful. Not a meltdown. Not a viral screaming match. But a real, layered debate that felt unscripted and uncomfortable at times. On the next episode, Whoopi briefly references it. "We had a good conversation yesterday," she says. "And that's what we're here to do." The audience applauds. Tom moves on with his press tour. The movie opens strong. Interviews continue. But that view appearance becomes the one people keep bringing up, the moment he didn't dodge. And that's why it stuck. Because it wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. It wasn't safe. It was live. And now we want to hear from you. Was Tom right to prioritize thoughtfulness over immediacy? Or should public figures speak out the moment something happens? Did Whoopi push too hard, or exactly hard enough? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.